that Lucy wanted to add to their breakfast regimen of bran muffins and Centrum silver tablets. All right. The 6 years in Bulgaria. The 4 before that in D.C. The 4 years prior to those at the U.S. mission to the UN, which put you back in the mid and late 70s. Some luck for that to be the era when they finally got posted to New York. And yet, for all the fiscal calamity and crime, that awful broad daylight hour when Lucy came home with a bruised cheek and no purse, he'd ridden the handbasket through some interesting stops on its way to hell. At 50, he'd been too old, really, for the underground pleasures that were suddenly so unpoliced. But his looks had granted him an extension, allowed him occasional, plausible entry to the throbbing middle-of-the-night world west of West Street. It had been some luck, a portion of his lifetime's worth, to have made it home from those forays without so much as a hangover, let alone the time-released fate that would now be necessitating one of those humiliating obits with their mention of a long illness, or pneumonia, that even Lucy, behind her newspaper and bran muffin, could manage to decode. But I digress, he thought, resuming the fast, reassuring rewind. He reached the 6 years in Austria, Nixon mostly, then the 4 in Sweden, where the draft dodgers had more social status than the embassy people, who ran down LBJ as much as they decently could while shaking their heads and nibbling the host's gravlax. And before that? The 14 years, 1952 to 66, right in Foggy Bottom, in the State Department's Bureau of Congressional Relations, where he would have been happy to stay forever, until Lucy decided that he should use his small accumulations of clout and connectedness to effect a shift, at the age of 40, from the civil to the foreign service. It was time for them to see the world, she had decreed. And that was it. A lifespan so well recollected, he decided, there was no need to do the date ranges for the early sojourns in Oslo and Paraguay, let alone Harvard and the Navy and St. Paul's. Nope, no Alzheimer's for Mrs. Fuller's little boy. Tomorrow morning, he'd tell Lucy to skip the muffins and to scramble some eggs in an aluminum skillet. He wondered, when they got home, would there be bus service from Maryland down to the Carnegie on Massachusetts Avenue? During his last period at State, 81 to 85, Reagan won, thank you very much, he had never gotten the hang of the new metro, whose underground rumblings had, in any case, never been permitted to disturb Georgetown. He was wishing that Lucy would just let them go back there and forget about this pile in Chevy Chase, when he noticed the small white envelope addressed in a feminine hand with the neatness of his wife's generation. One of her Wellesley pals? Maybe, though he couldn't recall any Russell in Scottsdale, Arizona. Only after another few seconds did he see that the letter was for himself and not his wife, so he slid it open, and soon heard himself saying, "Christ Almighty." Dear Fuller, Tim Laughlin died September 1st in a Catholic hospital in Providence, Rhode Island. He was 59 and had been sick for some time. I heard from him often, almost never saw him, but counted him a good friend. I don't know whether you pray, I myself don't, but if you do, I know that even now he would appreciate your prayers. Whatever the case, I thought you should know. Yours sincerely, Mary Johnson Russell. It had been more than 30 years since he talked to either one of them, and it was easier now to think of her first. She had never called him Hawkins. She'd thought it a preposterous first name and told him so. Said, the last shall be first, and that he would be Fuller with her, under any and all circumstances. He'd replied that she didn't know the half, that Hawkins was really his middle name, Zechariah being the first. And they'd laughed, she with a sharp glint in her eye that sometimes made him call her La Pasionaria, not because the glint was passionate, but because it declared so plainly that you, Z. Hawkins...